know where Ori is, but I think it was a great point. Hey, Ori, and one that's kind of got my wheels spinning this morning.
Natasha, what about you? What's the so far?
Yeah, I think I've been coming to these events for a couple of years, and I'm kind of always, the takeaway is it's hard. It is hard, and again, from this morning, we're just always pushing. But I really, really do believe that 2025 is, because there'll be this greater adoption in the consumer market, I think there'll be less resistance in the enterprise world to our staff and our customers to really give it a go. And so for me, the exciting part of this year is actually just really kind of encouraging everyone and getting people on board and, having them drive me, not me drive them.
Would that be nice? Yeah.
I suppose from the two sessions, two things that were just reinforced. Now, I'm a technology guy, right? I'm a geek, I look at the cool stuff. Technology is not the problem. It's human acceptance. And I think Jessica mentioned, you need the team and you need all the different stakeholders. I'd often work with companies and the people around the team, they're all into XR. So they're like, oh, it's great. And I'm going, can you get a couple of people who hate the thing and get them to sit at the table? Because that's how you're going to push it on. So that, again, we talk about more, but it's, technology is easy. Humans, we're a bit more complicated. And the second one, to Ori's point, I fundamentally believe everything that we do today and how we work and how we do change management and AI is fundamentally going to turn everything on its head. And I'm not just talking about ChatGPT or Claude, I'm talking about foundational models, world models, time series data, year range. I was at a conference last week in France about AI. There was a startup guy there, and he said, I don't care what your job is. I don't care how good you are. He said, there's a startup out there somewhere looking to automate your job.
Comforting. So Natasha, you said about implementing XR. To that point, Tim, when you experience people that those barriers, they are the barrier, what have you experienced of that and how you're addressing it?
Well, we get that a lot. It's a very kind of traditional engineering, project management, sort of probably an older workforce in our company, and really we need to get everyone internally to embrace it, to be able to support our customers to benefit from these new tools that we have. So some of just the most basic simple things is make it fun. So the first way to get people in is just to make it fun or funny. And we have had a lot of laughing sessions at people. And it's okay. It's okay to have people laugh at you. It doesn't matter if you look silly. That is, I think that's been a big thing, is to make it fun and use that as a way to initially get people over that barrier, so that it's not like, well, if I don't do this right, I'll fail my job. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's more, why do kids love it? Just fun, there's no pressure. So sort of part of that is a way we've kind of broken down some of those barriers.
So Jennifer, how do we make XR and data fun?
How do we make XR and data fun? That's an interesting question. Yeah. I led off talking a little bit about the adaptive nature of the space that we're preparing to enter, right? So if we think about XR, particularly in enterprise applications, maybe that's not the fun part. I don't know. But if you look at the possibility, that comes from us aligning around a common data format around human experience in XR, where we end up landing either in the consumer space or in the enterprise space, which I think is really important to the conversation we're having today, is the ability to adapt the experience, right? To look at someone in terms of what their skill set is coming into a particular XR experience, whether that be in VR or AR, to connect the individual's existing skill set to specific applications or contexts, and to adapt the experience going forward, to put them in conditions in which they may need to experience some type of simulation or real world support in the case of AR, full AR, to help escalate or elevate them to where they want to be. So where that gets fun on the consumer side is you get something that feels like it's for you, right? It's not just the same experience that everybody else has, it's something specific for you and whatever your aspiration is at the time at which you enter the experience. On the enterprise side, I think it's really interesting because it gives us the opportunity, I talk a lot about this, about making the aspirational attainable. It gives people the opportunity to identify with what the future of work looks like and what their roles might look like, to Kevin's point before, and actually start to have the experiences that they're not necessarily having in the day-to-day right now that help prepare their skill set so that they're proactively prepared for what's coming, which I think is kind of fun too. So lots to be said around those pieces, and really excited to see as we get more widespread adoption of freely available and open source data standards, which I'd love to talk to you about later, we get to the point in which AI can truly be effective. If we continue to silo off data and data formats in different applications and systems, we will not get there. So interesting world ahead, I think, for us.
So Kevin, barriers. So in terms of like what kinds of barriers, is it the grumpy old middle-aged who doesn't want to? Is it privacy concerns, as we were alluding to earlier? Where do you foresee, or what do you see mostly throughout your experiences when you talk to different companies? Do they change by industry? Do they change by size? Like, what are those patterns per se?
Personal opinion, all of the above. And what I mean is that we talk in big broad strokes of, it's going to be XR adoption. I spend most of my time in the energy industry or in industrial. And you go into you go to oil and gas companies, and how their own culture, because they're all based in Houston, but they have different cultures. They have different change management. They have different risk, whatever. So to be quite honest, like across the thing, I keep going back to, people are the hard bit, and you got to get the people on side. And that's hard, I know I just said AI is going to replace everything, but hopefully not all of us yet. So you still have to get the people, and I do a lot of work with different companies and whatever. I don't do any implementations. I have a nice job. I just kind of go in and play devil's advocate and pick it apart and then run away. But we're all here in the XR industry, and the thing I do with meetings with different companies is I'm a big fan of post-it notes. So I give you all a post-it note, and I'd say at the start of the meeting, I'd say, write down right now what you mean by XR. And if I did that in this room right now, I know how many people are in here, I guarantee you we get 100 different answers. That's just us. So then my thing is that you got to start off with a common level set. And it sounds so basic. And you're dealing with execs and you go, you know what a digital twin is, and you know understand what is spatial computing. They're like, absolutely, don't make it look stupid. And you got to write it down and then share it amongst their peers. They're talking about completely different things. So the first barrier is you're talking about different things. So no wonder you're doomed to failure, because I think it's going to be a photorealistic, spatially aware thing I'm going to train my robot models in. And the other guy's doing a little bit of LiDAR scan so I can do a bit of orientation before I go out in an oil rig. And then they wonder why they're like whoosh. So it sounds so basic, but I think sometimes we get carried away with everybody understands what I mean.
Yeah, and you get the LinkedIn newsfeeds with all the different people that are arguing, in our side that are arguing, no, that's not the digital twin. As if this guy over there is going, no, you don't know. Nobody knows anything except this one person, so it gets complicated. But so Natasha, I want to ask you, somebody who is in charge of XR for your company, how do you all define XR within your framework? Like, what does XR mean to you from a company standpoint?
Well, I guess XR to me is actually different depending on who the audience is, which department you're talking to, and what tools might relate from our XR toolkit to what they're doing. And it's sort of similar to AI right now, where if you're in marketing, you might be using, image generation, or in film, you'll be using different tools. So maybe that's also part of why XR is different to different people, because whatever your background is and your need moving forward in your job, then that's going to actually define something different for everybody. And I see that because my job is to implement enterprise XR in all the different departments. So marketing, sales, human resources, engineering, project management, product development. We have different technology stacks and different ways to deploy the technology for each different department. And so I think that's part of why everyone gives a different answer, because it's based on their world perspective, and they're all right. They're not wrong. There are many answers. That is part of the, fine with XR is that, it can be, it's malleable and it can be different to different people. And I think where we were talking about AI and adoption and, what is this? XR and AI are going to be a great partnership. I absolutely believe that. I think an interesting thing with AI, unless you're like specialized and trained in AI, what is AI to everybody else? Well, it's a tool to help me write better emails, to be a better communicator, to, iterate fast on new designs. For me, it's about baby steps. So you have the big picture idea, and then the implementation is about bringing people from where they're at and on a journey that's manageable for them. And it's a natural progression from where they're at now, building up skills in AI, in XR, that are benefiting them in their job today, to help them then understand that bigger overriding XR banner and where they fit in and how that relates to everyone else. Because to me, XR has always been about bringing people together and, communication on steroids. It's just next level communication there, it's very inclusive, and people can't always see that yet. So we have to bring them there from where they're at, both for XR and AI, and it will all come together. So
Jennifer, when she describes that complexity around XR, what it means to her, when somebody asks you for your advice, perspective, or whatnot, you're guiding somebody through those kinds of situations. Where do you, how do you approach those topics?
Yeah, well, I think it relates to some of the conversation we've already had, and I think how we kicked us off a little bit around talking about, some of the barriers with stakeholders and things like that. In the enterprise space, and Ori talked a little bit about this at the beginning too, there's a lot of conversation that's out there in the ether about XR. A lot of it has to do with hardware, right? And what people are seeing out there in the world, if they're not an XR expert, to Kevin's point, is what they're seeing on TV, or maybe to the point we made earlier this morning, gifts that they're giving their kids or what have you. I think there's a struggle there, or there's a tension there, in the sense that if I am a senior executive, and I also come from energy as well as government and defense infrastructure, if we're talking to our senior stakeholders within those organizations and they associate XR with a pair of Ray-Bans, it's difficult. It's difficult to tell the story about what it is we can actually do from an operational excellence perspective and what justifies the investment. And so I think sometimes people get a little too enamored with the hardware, too obsessed with all the form factors. I don't think the form factors are where they're going to be in the end state. I think a lot of us agree with that, right? So rather than focusing on the hardware itself, focus on what actual problems you're trying to solve from a business perspective, and also how you're going to prove the ROI associated with that. And I'm going to say something controversial. Some of you may have heard this from me before. That means actually connecting the human experiences happening within XR to the actual data the business is already collecting around operational processes, around environmental health and safety, all of those pieces. We have an overbaked use case in this space around safety and XR. I'll say this, it's controversial, right? And we say, oh, we're making all of this difference from it's the golden use case for XR, it's safety, right? if you're going through the process of implementing XR and you're going to a senior executive in your organization and you're saying, we're going to tie this to our learning management system and we're going to give a completion for people that go through this experience, and we're going to give them a grade. Your senior executives are going to say, and what does that mean? Does that actually make people safer? I think we've got to get a lot better about thinking before we start doing these implementations around what data we're actually trying to connect in that human experience to the data that the business cares about and is tracking. And so that's the number one piece that I would say to everyone is if you're looking to implement this stuff, go back and look at how the business articulates success. It's not about the completion of an XR experience in your LMS, right? And if we stay at that level, we're never speaking to that senior executive level whereby we're seeing the connection between operational excellence and efficiency and the XR experience we're trying to implement.
Yeah, we'll build on that. See if this goes where you're thinking. I wanted to ask, we're talking about hardware.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the pictures, we see all the different stuff, and it's all including what's going to be a museum one day, right? Because that hardware is going to go away, and that hardware had to get there, which means somebody had to pay for it, which is what you're starting to get towards. I'm guessing that might be where you are, but it's not what I asked you here. As far as barriers, we talk about all this stuff, but there is a massive economic aspect to this, right? That we just have to adhere to. Even investors, that's all great. My first argument in the spirit of being not contrarian, but kind of like adding to it, those investors don't want to just see cool technology adopted. They want a return. I don't know, anybody here does investing. I mean, whatever it is you're investing in, whether it's, regenerative agriculture or, Ford Motor Company or NVIDIA, at the end of the day, you want money back. You don't want it to go away. So maybe if that's not where you're going, can you touch on that for a second? Because you talked to a lot of big companies, like how does the money side?
I'll weave it in and out. Oh God, that's whatever. How do you impact that one? It depends. Okay, let me back up. So again, the barriers to it depends on the company, the use case, what are you trying to do, and it could be a training, it could be the real-time break fix, whatever. So someone will have, now let me break it out into two pieces. One is I'm the company that I'm building an XR solution, and that's, I need volume, I need scale. And we heard about the, POC purgatory, just one of the guys from Schneider Electric used to call it about POC-itis. There's a disease in enterprises because we were all stuck with POCs and we couldn't push it forward. And lots of reasons why. But cut a long story short, fine. I'm a startup, I need volume, I need people to deploy, I got to run out of cash before I make money. I'm a big enterprise, I have some sort of an ROI. And to be quite honest, again, it depends on how you do it, what methodology you use, yada. But it's like if I'm working with a company and their biggest thing is the cost of the headset, I'm going, you're missing that point. Because the headset and the initial creation of whatever you're doing is a tiny amount of the money. Because all the money you're going to spend in later on is that if you've just built a new siloed app for a particular point solution, you're going to spend a shed load of money in the next couple of years trying to integrate it into the next silo that you're building. And I'll unpack some of that in a session later, whatever you're stuck with me again later on. And that's hard. But some of the folks I work with, they go, Kev, we used to send people to the North Sea for 5 days orientation. That's it. We bought some very expensive headsets. We did LiDAR scans. We now cut that time from them going on site to they only go 2 days before the shift starts because we give them a VR thing. This is what it looked like last week. So they get a bit aware of whatever, in terms of cost and helicopter flights and whatever. They were going like, this isn't costing headsets peanuts. So it depends, and that's a very trite answer, right? But it's like anything you can stand up and say, oh, the ROI of this project is really good. For that project it was, but you have a different ROI model. And I think that I do think, and I agree with Ori and John Cunningham and others and whatever, I am incredibly optimistic about this space. I think there's a lot of stuff going on, whether it's the geopolitics, bringing manufacturing home, like, hey, we're doing it in Europe as well, hey, so you're not the only ones at it, trust me. Shortening supply chains. but we can't get the workers. And you can't reskill, and you're trying to keep the guys you have and whatever. And to Ori's point, you know, I'm a strange middle-aged white guy. I play a lot of Fortnite. Do you know that more kids play Fortnite creative than play the game itself? Creative is where you build your own worlds. So that entire generation is growing up with, call it spatial awareness. And then they're the guys who are going to fix this problem, right? Whatever, I'm not going to fix the world. So you suddenly get into the thing about, well, there's all these macroeconomic factors. They're not going away. So you have to kind of get with the thing. And I will honestly say, again, you can go around the room here, I could ask each one of you, what are the top 3 barriers you've come across with customers you're selling to? They'll all be different. But a lot of it comes back to, we don't have the data. We have data in silos. Plus, data probably isn't very good, and there's a lot of skeletons buried. And nobody wants to share the data because I don't want you to find out that I buried skeleton. Like that bad. But I'll tell you, and to Ori's point, and I'd like to think, you know, AI is the killer app for XR, and XR is the killer app for AI. Companies have to break down their data silos right now because everyone's chasing AI. If you own data, someone's coming for it. And I think, because we used to always say, well, if I want a proper XR project, I have to go fix the data problem, and I have to go fix that problem, and this problem, whatever. And it was just like you were reconstructing the organization just for a particular XR project. I think a lot of that's going to go away. And I can bore you to tears with how I think AI will fix some of that munging data to go. But again, I live in the look at that cool stuff you can do, and meanwhile, in reality, but that depends on the company. But there's so many cases, you know, the thing I do with a lot of teams is that they go, well, here are the top things that people ask us. How do you shut that conversation down straight away? Because if you leave it fester, you're doomed.
So Natasha, to that, from your experience in your company, how does that resonate with what you've experienced?
Yeah, so I initially tried to get a lot of information to form that base, to be able to, you know, actually calculate the ROI. And honestly, I just feel like everyone talks about it. We just really weren't good at it. Those hard facts. So the way it kind of evolved in our business and really got sold is because what we proposed, like, directly aligned with our business values and our goals for the business. And again, so we aren't providing XR solutions to other people. We use it in our business and to improve the service we give to our customers. And so for us, it was like, we want to be an innovative company. We want to give our customers the most amazing experience they can have, that we can deliver, and that our staff really have to come along to the party because we're doing it for our customers and we have buy-in at the highest level. So it wasn't so much about pushing the hard data. It was more about, well, what does this look like now? So what do we have to do across our business to improve the delivery of projects to our customers and to give them an experience that was far beyond what they expected? And people do get worried about sharing data, but I think we designed a workflow and a tech stack that considered where everyone's at now and what little steps they can take in their role to improve their knowledge and their experience themselves, but actually we sort of went from siloed teams where XR, the project was to deliver unique digital twins to our customers for their projects, but internally that meant we went from siloed data and work to kind of connected live teams working in this world. So internally, it's a huge cultural shift for us, and that was a really big thing. And I think that was hard because people are used to working just on their little piece, but now it's hard because they've got to consider who's down the line, which bit of equipment connects to my bit of equipment, and that guy works in another country, in another time zone. So, you know, it was hard to do before, but XR's given us a platform that has a persistent world that anyone can join. It's become this virtual team hub that reflects the actual design with a digital twin of the actual factory. And so all of the team members internally, now they don't just send their work to their boss who sends it to the guy in the country they're delivering this equipment to. They work directly together in this live design environment, and the customers are also participating with the designers in that world. So this has been like 10 separate people now all work directly together. And if you pop into that world at any point in time, that is the world. If the customer's in there, you're in there together. This is live. This is persistent. It's not, you know, a secret space where it's more open book. And yeah, so I think the RII and the hard facts are harder. We have done studies. We use more now automated clash detection and things like that because we have these holistic models. So we have been able to really improve on when we get to site, we're not having bad surprises, which inevitably happens. It happens in construction, it happens in engineering. It's just the state of events, right, as it is. It's not, we weren't bad, it happens to everybody. But now we have all this data and we have been able to catch so many errors that normally wouldn't find till you got on site. So every project has its own, you know, we can actually list those issues and we can surmise, well, maybe you would have caught some of them, but a lot of them you wouldn't. So, you know, there is a return on investment. We calculate it by each project. So I think that's, you know, but that's coming at the end. It's not at the beginning. We're not starting a project saying we are going to save you this much money. We know we're going to save money, but really we don't find out how much until the end.
It seems like I was in oil and gas for many decades as well. It didn't matter what industry you're in, it was typically it's my lawn, stay off my lawn, but now we're seeing that it's just one big lawn. That seems to be everywhere. So it made me think, Jennifer, of you. And so to this point about data and to Natasha's experience. So when somebody comes across and, hey, data doesn't sound fun, but then we're going to start with this really cool headset, we're going to change the business, where do we start? Oh, we need to organize your data. Okay, but I want to have you rank that in our second poll. So when you come across that, like, what have you seen to make that experience successful in terms of prioritizing and understanding?
I think it's a really thoughtful question, Sean, and I think this may sound counterintuitive, but the one thing that I say over and over again, and then this is me wearing my IEEE hat, right? Like our tagline is advancing technology for humanity, right? When we're thinking about data and how we're going to prove the efficacy of the solution, sometimes we also forget about the humans, right? I think there's a huge piece to this, right? XR literally does not exist without a human interacting with it. Think about that for a second. Really think about it. Because I don't see enough people talking about the human experience associated with XR and the data associated with it. If you have hardware and you have an experience, so what? Who cares? You need a person in that equation for it to do anything, right? When you're starting to look at data, I would encourage you to think about, once again, the humans that are part of the experience and how they're coming out of the experience shaped in a different way than when they went in. And aligning that to the data that you're looking for from an operational perspective. That's something different, right? It goes a little bit beyond kind of We didn't have to fly people to the North Sea and all of that kind of thing. Look, I spent a few years in mining. We did some great work around scenario planning from a people perspective. And what I mean by that is, let's plan out some scenarios that we intend to cause and or we think are going to happen. This was pre-COVID, by the way. And build out some scenarios around the skill sets that we need, like visually, to be able to see the skill gaps. If this happens, these are the skill gaps. If this happens, these are the skill gaps. So on and so forth. When you can get to that place, then you're in a really good situation because you can say, okay, there's increasing skill distance between the roles that people are performing today and the roles in which they need to perform in the future. We can literally see it with the data if you're recording data correctly and aligned to things like open source competency standards and frameworks and all of that. But if you're doing that, you then have the opportunity to say there's increasing skill distance. If scenario A plays out, whether we intended to cause it or not, we have to accelerate skill development quickly to be able to operate, right? There's data around that piece too, right? It's not just, did we save money not flying people? It's also, can we actually measure the skill acceleration that's taking place and actually position XR into scenario planning within our organization? It's from a strategic workforce planning perspective. I don't hear enough conversation about that data as it relates to XR. And I firmly believe that until we get to that space and we actually are using the data standards that already exist around competency frameworks and human experience, we're not going to get to the point in which we can put XR in the right place strategically and at the right level within our organizations to really lead to the scale and the potential that it actually has. I talked a little bit about AI before. Obviously, when you're in that type of scenario, then we can adapt the experience. We're adapting the experience around the human, not adapting the experience around hardware, right? And so until we can get to that type of data and discipline, I think we're gonna struggle, right? So that's kind of my approach in terms of having conversations with people. Let's think about the fact that we're putting the XR on people. What are we trying to shape or change in those individuals as a result of the experience? And how are we measuring that and aligning it to what we would expect to see in a real world scenario, if it's the case of VR, or in the actual real world scenario in the case of full blown AR. So that's some food for thought that I would encourage people to really, really think about.
So we have a couple minutes left. There's all kinds of things that we could continue on talking about. Is there anything anybody heard out in the audience that wants to ask a question that we can't talk? I just want to give you all an opportunity real quick in case there's something out there that I just really would love to ask Kevin, or Jennifer, something that they said. Anybody? Yes, sir.
Sure. I'd just like to touch on some of the data points, and I do agree that finding that thing that senior executive is going to find valuable is really important. But also to the point that sometimes the group you're starting with, that isn't their main objective. And so what I found, and I'd love to hear your takes on that, is that there's an immediate hit they need to get right away. And that first data point is not the data point for this group, this group, it's for this one. Knowing that once you get it, you're going to set up the data point for the next one, the next. I'd love to just hear about if you've had that kind of ripple effect and different points for the different groups.
Yeah.
2 minutes, just to FYI.
I'll say briefly, I mean, from an IEEE perspective on the human experience side, we have a standard called the XAPI standard. It's fully extensible. It allows you to do that, right? To look at the context that people will find themselves in, whether that's a physical context or a context of risk, and actually measure what happens when we put people in that environment and the actions that they take. That can be different across the organization, and that's a great place to start. Once again, trying to connect those to the competency frameworks that are relevant to that particular part of the organization are helpful as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that I was talking about were around that were, we've rolled out this workflow, and it touches so many different roles within our company. And the hard part but the most beneficial thing is to work out for each role, what is that benefit? So you're going to do something, but you're going to get something back. And that is at the user level. And to the point of hardware, I would say, actually, a lot of our baby steps are, all right, let's just do it on your laptop first. And let's have fun times in VR. And when you're ready, use VR as well. But I think that, really delivering these new experiences and things that we want at a high level comes in at the user level. That's where we have to understand the need.
In 20 seconds or less. Yes, been involved in many. I'll unpack this in a session later on. I start talking about platforms and where we're headed with that, and whether that's NVIDIA Omniverse, Becky's iTwin, Cesium, Schneider Electric's Connect, yada. You can start with, but a lot of the time the person will say, Kev, can you please go away? We understand the strategy, but we've got a burning fire here and we just got to fix that, and that's the budget that's for, and we just got to go do it. And I kind of go, that's what you got to do, but try and draw some links, otherwise you've created a side on. Someone's going to be upset. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you all so much for packing all that.